Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. So today we are going to completely rethink a phrase that honestly millions of people use every single day. We're talking about Bismillah. We're going to see how it is so much more than just an automatic reflex you mumble before eating or working. It's actually this profound psychological anchor. We are going to dive into the true consciousness of servitude behind it and figure out how shifting our mindset completely changes the way we carry our daily burdens on behalf of Allah. Let's just jump right into it. So let me ask you a question, and be honest. Do you ever just get that feeling of overwhelming isolation? Like you're staring down the barrel of a massive task, and deep down you think, man, I have to do this completely on my own power. It's a super common human experience, right? This sudden, crushing weight of feeling like you are the sole engine driving your entire life forward. And if you stop pushing for even a second, the whole thing crashes. I mean, we've all been there. We constantly face these everyday heavy burdens where we think we've got to carry the entire load solo. Think about pulling all-nighters for a brutal exam or kicking off a super demanding project at work, or even just hyping yourself up for a really tough, stressful conversation with a friend. When we tackle these things believing we are totally alone, it literally leads straight to burnout. We trick ourselves into thinking all that weight belongs squarely on our own shoulders. But what if I told you there's a radically different way to approach this weight? The core text we're unpacking today comes from the first word of a book called Küçük Sözler, and it opens with this very short but absolutely perspective-shattering sentence. Bismillah is the start of all good. It's such a simple phrase, but it provides us with this incredibly profound, faith-based lens for looking at life. Everything literally starts right here. Now, a lot of the time, let's face it, we treat this phrase as just a habit. It's this accustomed, repetitive thing we just say right before starting a task without giving it a second thought. But the actual reality of it, it's entirely different. It's meant to be this deep, true consciousness of servitude. It's a deliberate, active moment where you pause and remember exactly who you are acting on behalf of. And here is the absolutely crucial point. Saying Bismillah isn't just a warm-up, it's an active declaration of reliance. When you say it with real intent, you are reminding yourself, hey, I'm not starting this with my own incredibly limited human power. I'm starting with Allah's name, His permission, and His help. Just imagine how much weight that shifts off your shoulders. You're no longer the isolated engine. You're plugging into a limitless source of support. To really help us wrap our heads around this, the source text uses this brilliant metaphor. It calls the life of this world the desert. Picture it, a vast, intimidating desert. Resources seem super scarce, the terrain is harsh, the journey is totally daunting. I mean, it perfectly captures that underlying anxiety we feel just trying to navigate our everyday lives, doesn't it? And naturally, walking through this vast desert is a traveler. And spoiler alert, that traveler represents you. It represents me. It represents all of us. We are all just journeying through this worldly desert together, which makes figuring out how to survive it incredibly relevant to every single person watching because, well, none of us get to just opt out of the trip. Now, as travelers out there, we face some pretty intense hazards. We've got these endless, continuous human needs just to keep going, and we're surrounded by numerous, totally unpredictable dangers. But honestly, the most dangerous hazard of all is the crushing illusion that we have to control everything. When we try to cross this desert, acting entirely on our own behalf, we feel forced to manage every single variable, which is literally impossible. And this right here is where we find the ultimate psychological antidote. Look, acting alone and trying to control the uncontrollable, that's just a fast track to despair. But when you start with Allah's name, you are connecting your tiny, limited capacity to a source of infinite power and mercy. You're effectively looking at the desert and saying, okay, I can't control this, but I'm under the protection of the one who does. Now, a supernatural question pops up here, and it's a trap I see people fall into all the time. You might be wondering, okay, if I'm relying on infinite power, does that mean I can just abandon my own effort? Like, can I just say Bismillah, kick back, and do nothing? It is absolutely vital we clear up this misconception about what spiritual reliance actually means in the real world. Let's look at it practically. Think about a student getting ready for a huge exam. True reliance, it still requires sincere, active effort. You don't just say the word and toss your textbooks out the window. You make a solid plan, you study hard, you review the material diligently. But the massive shift happens in the background. Even while grinding and doing all that hard work, you recognize that your own personal power is actually quite limited. Because while you're putting in that intense effort, if you're truly conscious, you remember that the tools you're using aren't actually yours to keep. Your intellect, the time you have to study, your physical health, your opportunities, they are all what's called emanet. They're trusts. They're resources temporarily loaned to you to do the work, not some self-generated superpowers you created from scratch. Which brings us to this foundational truth. If you take away only one thing from this explainer today, make it this. Bismillah is not abandoning the work. It's simply not assuming you are the absolute owner of everything while you work. It is a fundamental shift in your mindset about ownership. You still put in 100% effort, but you completely let go of the ego that says, I created this success entirely on my own. So how do we actually make this a real habit in our lives? Let's put this into practice today with a super simple 3-step application. Try this before your next meal, your next study block, or even your next big meeting. First, consciously say Bismillah. Don't just mumble it on autopilot. Second, take a quick pause and ask, is my intention right here? And finally, check if you're using your given resources, your time, your energy, properly and responsibly. Bringing this whole thing full circle, this realization completely changes how we deal with those massive modern anxieties we talked about at the very beginning. Look, saying Bismillah isn't a magic spell to escape the burden of your projects or your tough conversations. It is about knowing exactly with whose help you are carrying them. It's about carrying the load on behalf of Allah, drawing from His infinite strength instead of draining your own little battery. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to kind of chew on as you step back out into the desert of your daily life. Take a look at the tasks you've got lined up for today. Which one of those tasks are you going to start, not with the heavy, isolated burden of your own limited power, but with this true, empowering consciousness of servitude? Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I really hope this perspective brings a whole new sense of ease and purpose to your day. See you next time.